Looks like we are live. Welcome to the stream. My name is Corey. I make music and sounds under the name Ether Diver. And yeah, I stream Pigments programming on a regular basis, as well as some other synthesizers. Pigments is probably the most common one. Although I also do some hardware synthesizers, Microfreak, and other software synths. Dream Synth I've done. Whatnot in the past, and we'll probably do more in the future, depending on what people want. So if there's something that you want to see, you should ask about it, and I'll see if I can make that happen for you. Today, I thought it would be nice to look at synth basses, uh, what they are, how to make them, etc., etc. Kind of some thoughts about the general theory and practice of them, and maybe some explanation of my approach to coming up with bass sounds. Now, in preparation for this, I did watch a few other videos of, I guess you would call them, how to make synth bass videos or types of synth bass videos, that kind of thing. Just get an idea of what I had some idea of what the prevailing thought space was out there, but thought it'd be worthwhile to get just some other people's perspectives. And what I found is that I don't know that the level of thinking is super well developed or deep. And that's not to say that I'm going to bring anything exciting to the table, but just that there's probably more to explore than is sort of currently being discussed, at least. And, different ways to approach it. One of the things that I noticed about most of the videos was that they tended to categorize basses into sort of, I don't know, types, kinds of basses. Um, for example, they'd say, here's how to make a Reese bass, here's how you make a sub bass, here's how you make an 808 bass, here's how you make a donk. And that's a reasonable way to do it. Certainly having the terminology to discuss something is one of the first keys to really understanding it and being able to do it. But my counterpoint to that is that terminology is actually not all that useful or enlightening. Like if you are just new to this stuff, Reese bass doesn't say anything about what you're trying to do. And for that reason, I tend to like to think about things in more concrete terms, musical terms. And so rather than think of it as like there's a Reese bass and this, that, obviously those are musical applications of a sort, but they don't really even tell you like, well, what do you use an 808 bass in? It might make sense to think, oh, we'll use that in hip hop or whatever. Maybe that's true. I don't really know. I don't really use a lot of 808 style basses, but and some people call 808 style bass a sub bass, so that's not very useful either. But and again, I'm not sure that this I'm here to shed any more light on it in an absolute sense. I'm not sure that what I have to say is anything special, but it is a little different than how they think about it, and so I thought it might be useful to discuss that. And I tend to think of synth basses and really all sounds mostly first, primarily in terms of two things really: the timbre, so what kind of sound it is, like if it's very sharp, a lot of harmonic content, etc., very electronic sounding, and naturalistic sounding, and then the envelope, which can be plucky, or slow, or sustained or not, and just sort of categorize those things. So in that sense, a Reese bass, for example, I guess we could start with a Reese bass, is typically going to be a sustained bass that is made with, traditionally, it is made with two or more oscillators that are detuned, but you can also make it with the unison effect, which is a little easier on modern digital synths at least. So if I was doing this on the Hydra synth, actually on the Hydra synth, that's not true. If I was doing this on the Mini Brute 2S, for example, I would set both oscillators to the saw and then detune them a little bit. But here, what I'm going to do is use the unison instead. So we got 3 voices on unison, and now we're going to adjust the tune here. We've selected let's get this 3D view, turn the morph off so we have a nice clean sawtooth, and turn it, turn it back on. See right there, you've already got sort of the heart of the Reese bass is done with just those 2 things. So you can just kind of set up an envelope here that goes to max volume and then dips down just a little bit, goes max volume immediately. And then from there, we just need to give it a little more movement. So we can do the put an LFO on the detune. Let's see what speed wise. And obviously this is one of those things where you could since it's bass, you probably want it all mono center. Sounds a little less lively, but in the headphones for sure. But when you are pumping it through a sound system, you'll want it to be mono for sure. Same thing here. You take this LFO, put a little, maybe even less than that. If you want to make it mono, because basses typically are. So that's it's simple as that for a basic Reese style bass with a synth that has detune. And if you didn't have detune, you could go up here, say copy engine 1 to engine 2, and then turn it on and detune it. You can turn the unison on both of these down. But again, since this has this capability, there's no reason not to do it. And we can just do some things like, just to make it a little more. Some amp mod on here. It's 50%. We can also add a little bit of velocity cutoff. oops, wrong way. Velocity cut off, so harder you hit it. Give you a little dynamicism. Not an easy word to say. Yeah, what else can we do here just to make it a little more interesting? We could use some aftertouch to tell you what, let's use aftertouch to boost the resonance. So you can, if you hold it down while you're doing your Reese thing, you can get a little variation, maybe even a little variation with some aftertouch there, so the resonance will sharpen it up as you push harder on the key. If by chance you have been following my how to synth programming course, lesson, whatever you want to call it. First of all, I apologize for not getting the second part up a little quicker. I am in the home stretch. It has gone through multiple drafts. It's a lot of information to organize, and this is my first crack at it. So I apologize for taking so long to get up there. It is coming soon. But if you are using that, you could. This is a good example of the exercises at the end of lesson 1, say, to make a synth with just one oscillator, just one envelope, just one of everything, basically, which, to be fair, this is cheating just a little bit because I did not go over any unison settings or whatever, and you can't make a proper respace with just one oscillator if you aren't using unison, which is doubling, tripling the oscillators, adding additional copies of the oscillators and detuning them. It's the basic technique there, but so it's cheating a little bit. But this is a good example of, apart from that, you can do everything you need to do with just one. I don't know if that really makes a difference. And what we could also do, we can go down here and turn on a sub oscillator 1 octave down. Yep. And maybe in a traditional Reese bass, you would not have a sub, but there's nothing stopping you from customizing things a little bit. And again, I'm not sure this is traditional in any way, shape, or form, but I'm going to add a little bit of noise to my Reese bass because I've just been on a add a little bit of noise to everything kick lately. It's just a way to sort of add a little kick of verisimilitude, realism, whatever you want to call it, to a lot of sounds, because noise is a big component of a lot of non-synthesized sounds. And so if you mix a little noise in with your synthesized sound, sometimes they sound a little more realistic. We could play with some effects or whatever, but honestly, I think just as a basic approach thing here, it's worthwhile to just see how to do one of these, see how simple it is, and see how quickly you can make your own. We could try some variations of this. Let me save this one. And again, I mentioned, I opened by saying, like, I wouldn't really categorize this. Calling something a Reese bass or whatever is not always that useful. So that's a classic techno technique. And I would call this a sustained, just a sustained saw bass, detuned sustained bass, because those words actually mean something. And anyone you say sustained to, even someone who is not necessarily speaking a very musical language, is going to understand probably to some degree what you mean when you say a sustained. They might not know what detuned means, but you could also say wobbly or movement. And again, tastes differ. Like maybe this is too bright for your tastes as Reese basses go. Obviously, you could just turn the filter down and make it darker. Got a lot of different things moving that filter around. But yeah, as far as like a simple sustained bass goes, the so-called Reese bass, that's it. That's all you have to do to make it. We could try a similar technique with different waveform this time. Maybe we'll do something a little more interesting. Let's see what kind of options we have here. Let's get the newest wavetables. What's acid sound like? Ooh. Wavetables are fun. Fractal song. This is some kind of mini Moog sampled, probably fake mini Moog sampled from Arturia's own emulation. So let's try. Oh, we already have the unison up on this, don't we? Let's try and do this the old-fashioned way, just for the sake of doing it. Copy engine 1 to engine 2. Okay, now we will detune. got that little. Now, so obviously with the unison, you have the opportunity to get a lot more voices, make it a lot bigger. But, you know, it's worth doing things the quote unquote hard way from time to time just to see how we did it back in the day. And since this one is a slightly different and more interesting wavetable, oops. Do that same modulation on engine 2. But then also move this down a little. Then also and I'm just kind of winging all this, obviously. Turn the LFO1 speed up a little bit. So anyway, point being, you got a very similar effect here. You know, use this other wavetable just to make it a little more interesting. It's not fun to do the exact same thing over and over again, but you could certainly switch this to a to a traditional sawtooth or to any other waveform for that matter. A little longer release on this. I could also try a different filter on this. I could try the Mini Moog filter. Drag it a little. I think I actually prefer once again, this is just like a sustained detuned bass. I tend to prefer pluckier basses myself. Yet another. Let's see here. Trying to be too clever, but the Reese bass. Another Reese. also dark. It's a Reese. And you know, even if you aren't really super into making all your own sounds or whatever, I think that these sort of lessons in this approach can kind of help understand why, um, you know, a little bit why it's worthwhile. I mean, when you see how easy some of these things are to make, it does sort of become like, oh, well, I can definitely do that. And that's not to say that there's anything wrong with buying preset packs. Or not making your own sounds. It's just, you know, once you know how easy it is, you can definitely feel like, why am I not doing this? Certainly when you're like talking about something that's as simple to whip up as a Reese bass in a modern, because again, like you don't, this is the long way, what I'm doing right now. If you just want to whip something up to give something your own slight spin, it's so super easy to do that in a modern synthesizer. There's really no reason that you shouldn't, because you know, to the casual observer, most people who listen to your work, honestly, 90, 100%, 1,000%, I don't even know, you know, everyone maybe. Um, because I admit, even as a music maker, sound designer, and music critic myself, I'm rarely listening to something and being like, oh, what an interesting variation on this sort of core Reese-based concept, or you know, oh, what an interesting, you know, occasionally I will note that a sound is cool, but I definitely don't have any guess as to whether or not something is a preset or something that someone programmed themselves or whatever, nor do I really care. Um, Other than just like if I'm working with someone and they are, you know, want to show off a sound that they made or whatever, like, you know, I'll listen to it and be duly impressed. Like, I'm good for, hey man, nice work. Um, and, you know, and it's, I just think it's a valuable skill to have, to be able to crank out at least some basic sounds on your own and quickly. Okay, so there's another Reese style or sustained wobbly bass. Let's do my sort of preferred little plucky. You know, low passed, filter enveloped. This right here. So okay, so what I've done, I selected a sawtooth from this basic waveform wavetable. We just turned it till we got a clean sawtooth. Look at the non-3D version. Look at that, it's a sawtooth. And put it into, we set this amp envelope to be plucky. Got a 0.2 millisecond attack, a 492 millisecond decay, and 467 on, we're actually going to lower that to say 347 on release. And then we have this second envelope here, which with the 1 millisecond attack, 500 millisecond Let's make that a little. Actually, let's make that a little longer. And now. This is another sort of classic, maybe a synthwave bass. This is what I would call this a plucky bass, or a plucked bass. There's no sustain on it. I'm holding this key down, no sustain. And yeah, it's. And now, so we've just used this sawtooth wavetable, basic wavetable. But now it is probably worthwhile to see if we can find something a little more interesting. Maybe set. Another thing we could do is set it that way. I think it's more interesting the other way. We'll do that and open it to about there. We can also actually so I was experimenting there with a little bit of FM and phase mod on the oscillator controlled by envelope 2, but I think I'm actually going to try and do that controlled by envelope 3. Okay, so let's get like 5 to 7 milliseconds on there. That's pretty good. And make this like a, yeah, that's too short. That's, yeah, maybe just a little shorter. And put this on just a tiny bit of phase mod, so envelope 3. You don't have to use all the envelopes, but it is kind of nice. And this is a kind of bread and butter, another different bread and butter bass here that is, it's pretty basic. No pun intended. It's got a little knock on the attack from that actually one more time. So on second thought, I think this is, we'll do the phase mod with this. And then let's try this envelope real short. Yeah, there we go. And we'll do that. So use a pitch envelope there to, it goes up a fifth, or I mean a fifth, it goes up yeah, it goes up a perfect fifth and drops right back down, jumps up, and then slowly over 27 milliseconds. So it's not really enough time for your ear to register that it's a different pitch. But again, really just kind of trying to show that, you know, how this differs. And this is the kind of sound that's a little bit more like, not that this is like a bass guitar, but it is more similar to a bass guitar than, say, something like a Reese bass, or you know, than a sustained bass that just can kind of drone away. If you've ever played a bass guitar, you know that, you know, you can sustain it for some amount of time, and obviously there's sustainers and different tools you can get to make it go even longer. But ultimately, you know, the notes are going to fade out relatively quickly because it's a plucked string instrument. So yeah, so the phase mod and the on envelope 2 and the pitch bend on envelope 1 both sort of emphasize this attack. And again, I think on this one we probably want to give it maybe we want to move, make the old envelope cut off a little more dramatic. Nah. And what we can actually do is sidechain this by velocity. Now, a lot of times I will actually add a velocity bump on there. But this actually just controls how much of the envelope gets used based on velocity. You know, it's a pretty common, you know, way to add a little, again, dynamic response. You get some pretty style basses going there. And again, we could probably make this mono, although we don't really need to. I mean, a bass guitar is not mono after all. And we could also, let's just add a little bit more just a little bit. We could make this even lower. And envelope 2, just use it, just make it bump just a little bit. Yeah, don't like that actually. So if you're learning anything here, I hope that you're learning how much synth programming is trying something, going, no, that's not quite right, and then undoing it. Because it is very much an iterative process, especially when you are, I don't know, maybe not especially. I say when you're not really designing to spec, you're just sort of trying to make some cool sounds. When you are, for example, in the studio in the midst of recording something and you decide that you don't have a good bass sound that you want to use for the track that you're working on, and you know, sort of designing to spec in that way, not to spec, but to to designing to need what you need in the moment right there. It's sometimes easier, sometimes harder. It really just depends. But certainly when you know exactly what you're going for, if you know exactly what you're going for and know your tools very well, then there's maybe a little less iteration. But you know, a little. When you're just playing around is what I'm trying to say. There is a certain amount of like, try this, nope, that's not right. Try that, nope, that's not right. Try that, nope, that's not right. Especially in a synthesizer like this one. That's going to, require it. You can see how the unison sort of changes. Generally, with no detuning, you get more guts, more low end. Doesn't get phase canceled by the detuning, taking out some of the frequencies. Low end tends to get chewed up. That's why the same reason they want you to use a mono bass. Why all the advice says always make your bass mono, which you do not have to make your bass mono. You can definitely have non-mono bass. You just have to keep in mind that you might lose some oomph because of stereo cancellations, and it can be very difficult, I think, to predict what it's going to sound like in your club, if that's what you're making music for. Now, my music is mostly made for headphones, so I can feel pretty comfortable that if it sounds okay in my headphones, that it'll sound okay in yours. But I know that's not everyone, and so that is something that you might have to keep in mind. It's a bass. It's a plucked bass. That's a category. Characteristics. It's got a little FM. It's actually a little phase modulation, but kind of the same 6 of one, half dozen of another. Pretty digital, filtered. It's kind of classic. It's maybe the tiniest bit funky, kind of punchy. We'll say it is also techno. You could probably use it as a trance bass too. I don't know. You could use it for anything. I don't really believe songs necessarily belong to genres. But your mileage may vary. So let's try another different plucked bass. here you can check out, this is kind of a, I think most people will call an FM style bass. Get that attack, get that click on the front. That's all about this pitch bend here. Extend that out, you get a laser effect, or like synth tom. See, if it's short enough, it just makes basically a click. You can do like an 808 style here. There's not much to modulate, but sorry, my brain's not working here. All right, so I've got this envelope set up. The wave folder adds some harmonics. And we can do the same to use the same envelope, add even more harmonics. That, if we want to, but I don't really think that actually sounds very good. And I don't know that like this part is necessarily part of your typical .808 style bass. It was headed that way until I added the wave folder, but I think that's one of the reasons to make your own sounds too, is you start off making something very standard, maybe that you're just like, oh, I'm just going to add a little spin to this, but then sometimes along the way you run into something we're actually going to bump the release on this to something not ridiculous, but kind of lingering. Decay, oh yeah, the decay is huge, so filter drops off real fast. Okay. See, this is kind of shaken out to be something mellow, and this falls somewhere between a sustained and a plucked bass. I mean, it is technically a plucked bass. There is no sustain on it. You get almost bell-like tones up high. it is worth noting that that we are barely scratching the surface. Like, you'll notice I rarely change the filter, even though there are a bunch of different types in here. Okay, good, you can see that. It's got the multi-mode filter here, which of course has a bunch of subtypes, but then you've also got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so 5 more that are emulations of famous filter types. And then a surgeon filter, which is a super duper steep cutoff slope filter. A comb filter, which is, I mean, it is a filter, but it's a really weird one. A phaser filter, which is a phaser. A formant filter, which is, it's got multiple peaks in it for vocal type effects. And a low pass gate, which mimics of actual style low pass gate, which, if you're not familiar with what a low pass gate is, it's kind of a combination of a filter and a VCA, an amp. And it has its own natural decay built in, so you don't have to like use it with an envelope or whatever. It kind of does its own thing. It just gets hit by a signal, goes loud, and then sort of naturally decays. And that is very much used in East Coast style synthesis, Buchla style synthesis, Surge style synthesis, some modular as well. So it's a nice option to have. But anyway, point being, you'll notice I rarely switch off of this filter because it sounds good. It's very versatile. This is all one filter right here. It's got 5 different low pass modes, 3 band pass, 4 high pass, and 3 notch modes. And oh, I'm sorry, I miscounted. It's 4 low pass, 4 high pass, 3 each of band and notch. And yeah, it sounds good, and it's super duper easy because it's the default. And I just don't, often find a need to stray far from it. But if you had this synthesizer, I expect you would find that one of these would end up suiting your fancy really well, and then you wouldn't necessarily move off it a lot. But yeah, it's just a very deep program, and there's a million different ways to approach things in it. I guess my point with that is that you don't really need a huge amount of, you don't need the latest, greatest synthesizer. You can park your gas. You don't need anything super high end. This is new, I think costs $200, or maybe it's $300 as its actual MSRP, but it's always on sale one way or another. So you can get it. Like I got this for $69. I think 99 is its normal sale price a lot of the times if you own other Arturia things. But even if you're just using something like Vital, and that's not to talk shit about Vital, just that it's a free synth or Surge, or even something simpler than that just has a couple of different virtual analog. Even if you actually, here, I'll tell you what, let's save this, and I will make my point rather than talking with a different engine. This one's kind of a folded bass, because that's a wave folder giving it that sort of distinctive timbre. It's fairly soft. We'll say this one is for IDM and lo-fi and tropical house. I don't know, why not? And it's folded. It is filtered, but it's also folded. Yeah, it's fine. Whatever, synth. Yep. Save. let's go to a new preset and okay, so what I was saying is you do not need a synth with a bunch of fancy pants features and high-end bullshit in order to make unique, um, idiosyncratic, true to you sounds. Because even with a very few controls, um, there's just a bazillion things you can do here. So this is the virtual analog engine that this has, and as you can see, it's got 3 oscillators, mini Moog style, with 5 basic wave shapes each, and yeah, it's got the unison mode here, but it also has chord super unison, yeah. Or this is a super saw style, and then yeah, okay. So there's regular unison, chord unison, and then super unison, super saw style unison. I don't know that we're going to use any of those, like, because again, I was wanted to illustrate how much you can achieve with, let's say you don't have even something as powerful, as flexible as um, Vital or Serum or Pigments, much less something like Phase Plant or whatever, which can get even deeper, the ones that are essentially a full modular in software. And maybe you just have a simple 2 or 3 oscillator soft synth, and you're wondering, well, can I do my own sound? So let's say we'll make this a 2 oscillator, 1 envelope, 1 LFO, none of the combinatorial function, random, although we would probably have random on most synths, so maybe we'll use random if we think we need it. And just the basic controls, velocity, keyboard tracking, and we can use the mod wheel too. And just see what kind of, hey, good to see you from Blue Sky. I am glad to have you. This one is a little different than the ones I've been doing, but I guess you wouldn't know that because you haven't been on any of the other ones. But just thought I'd kind of focus on some synth-based theory and practice. So if you have any thoughts that you want to chime in or questions that you would like answered, I am happy to hear what you have to say. Right now, I'm about to demonstrate how you don't really need much to make, especially bass lines. They're very simple, but any sort of sound really. But let's do a Reese style bass here. All right, so as usual, so we're starting with 2 oscillators, detuned, 0.080 semitones. So I don't know how many cents that is. Enough to give some motion. And then we will, oops, that's not what we want. I just want to speed this up and put it on here. And we'll turn the drift up a little bit. just adding a little bit of noise in here to emphasize the attack a little bit. Let's make this decay. So just trying to get the add some subtle motion here, a little LFO. Yes, I don't. I'm not sure what speckle is. There are a lot of different noises in here on the utility engine. It ships with. Let's see. So I can turn this on. So this noise here is something that's built into this engine. It's got the red, white, and blue noise, which are different kinds of filtered noise. I think those are maybe generated, or they might be being pulled from the sample set as well. And then this is sampled noise, and there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 50, 60, 70 or more types of noise available. Gosh, it looks like it might even just let you use any. I don't even know if this is like every. Okay, nope, we did. We went around. We finally made it around. 100? Is that 100 kinds of noise? I got tired of counting. Around 50, and it seems like we were only about halfway through then. So something like 100 different kinds of noise. So if put speckle on it. So I'm not sure what speckle is, unless you mean like vinyl noise, like because we can definitely put vinyl noise on there. Like here's old vinyl. Sounds like that. Sound pretty good, actually. Need to get the filter down a little more. It's almost too bright. The utility engine can also give us a sub-oscillator. And there you go. You are basically in the completed Reese bass landing zone once again. Because again, that kind of bass is super duper ridiculously simple when you come right down to it. We can add a little velocity. Let's see, there's the. Oh, we don't have a filter envelope on here, huh? Well, let's put envelope 2 on the filter. Let's turn it down to here and put that on there. And we'll sidechain that to velocity. So in other words, we're controlling the amount of envelope that's applied to the filter by velocity. And we need to turn it down a little bit. Okay, so we're actually going to take that other noise out, put a little bit of sustain on there, and then turn this down further. Huh, okay, maybe it's something I'll have to look up. Is something, the speckling? Is it something that's in a certain plugin that you use? Um, it's definitely something I'm willing to check out. I do like things that make it a little more deeper and organic, so that's good. Um, but yeah, like even if you didn't have a fancy old vinyl noise to mix in, you could mix pretty much any noise in. It's not going to be that different really when you come right down to it. Make this mono. I'll tell you what, you don't often need a lot of vibrato on your Reese bass, but if we're not going to use the mod wheel for anything else, we might as well use it to control the vibrato. So we'll sidechain that 100%. So in other words, mod wheel down, no vibrato. Mod wheel up. It's kind of hard to discern with all the other motion going on, but that's fine because you don't actually generally want a lot of vibrato on your bass necessarily. It's already got it moving. Oh, I did cheat and use a third LFO or second LFO. I used the third LFO, but said I was only going to use one. But for the main functions, we're just using that for a little vibrato control. Speckled noise on the mod wave is sub on. Okay. Cool. Yeah, I will keep an eye out for your post, and I will also look at the monitor or the manuals for the mod wave and the multi-poly and see what it has to say about it in there, and then maybe I will understand it a little better what is going on. Hold on, I'm sorry, I have to. It's getting a little chilly. Gotta shut my window. It was hot as hell in here when I started. Sun's gone down now and getting a little colder. Okay, so this is our third Reese bass. And we will call this one VA Reese, as in virtual analog, because it uses the virtual analog engine. So I have watched some of your and seen some of your posts about the different sort of pieces you've been recording. It looks like you have several of the you mentioned the mod wave and the multi-poly, and do you have a wave state and some of the other ones as well? Some of the other Korg of that series or that sort of family of synths. I have a Korg Op 6, which I really love, and I should, if I was not so lazy, I should get it set up so that I can stream it, but it requires an overhead camera, and it's kind of a pain in the ass, in all honesty, but Doesn't mean I shouldn't do it, because it is one of my favorite synths. I could also stream the plugin, but I feel like that's not as much fun. A lot easier though, so maybe that's something to consider. We'll just call this a techno bass, deep techno bass, Reese, save. And preset, maybe we can do the same thing with one of those plucky style ones that I tend to prefer. Okay, let's take the VCA envelope and control the filter with it. As you can already see, we're like halfway. Speckled noise, noise with both roll-off and clipping, very aggressive timbre. With additional low-pass filtering, it can produce sounds reminiscent of thunder and explosions. Okay. Wave state Mark II, wave state Op6 Mark 1, Op6, multi-poly, King Corneo. Yeah, you got the whole fam. The mod wave is the one that probably interests me the most after the one I already have, which is the, as I mentioned, is the Op6. The mod wave looks super duper cool, and I wish the plugin, I mean, not that it's a bad deal, but it's hard for me to justify buying more synthesizers of any sort, but especially more plug-in synths when I have Pigments, which, as you can probably see, does a whole lot. So oops, not what I meant to do. Getting into like a sci-fi bass here. And once again, I'm going to go to the utility engine and add a sub oscillator. So yeah, so the point here that I guess I'm trying to make with all this is that you can get a lot of mileage out of some pretty simple tools. Like you don't, again, I know I'm essentially repeating myself here. I've said this exact same thing, but I just don't want anyone to watch this and think, hey, I need to spend a bunch of money on a new synth so I can do all these cool things. These days, even the cheapest, freest soft synth that isn't a direct emulation of something old is going to have enough flexibility built into it that you can do almost anything on it that you would really ever want to do, unless you're getting into, like, certainly when you're talking about, like, I want to make my own synth bass so that my synth bass is just a little bit different than everybody else's. You can do that with anything. The only time you might need to get into something specific is if you're doing some very experimental, hardcore synth programming and need something that's, you know, very out of the box. You're trying to like out weird Aphex or out weird Otecker, you know, then that's where some of the really weird, wild stuff comes in. But a lot of this stuff you can, you know, a lot of the basic stuff, I should say, any synth will do it. And like listening to this stuff, you probably are recognizing you see when I switch between the had a sawtooth before, now it's a square, and it has this kind of hollow sound. Go back to it sounds a little fuller. It literally is fuller. I mean, and that right there sounds like half the techno basses you've heard in your lifetime. Because it is half the techno basses you've heard in your lifetime. Remember the first time I ever went to a rave and was just like, holy shit, all of this music is just drum sounds and filter noises. That's all it is. And I kind of still stand by that today, but at the time I was not put off by it exactly, but a little surprised at how simplistic some of the stuff was. And now I'm just like, oh, no, that's actually, it makes a lot of sense. Because, you know, dance music is a very specific and constrained purpose, and it's to get people dancing. And so you don't always need to have a lot of weird, wild shit. And as a matter of fact, that stuff can be quite distracting. So. But yeah, just as another, what would you call it? Another exemplar bass. I think this one, it sounds good. And as you can see, it was super easy to make. It took a few minutes. I was able to have a conversation in the middle, all the same. And yeah, to jump away from I think I've made the point that you can make a lot of different sounds that you've heard and are familiar with on just about any synthesizer. You do not need something special, high-end, whatever. But also the other point that I would make is that this doesn't have to be like this super painstaking type A process. Like you can just like pull something up, tweak a few envelopes, and be on your way. And yeah. And yeah, the other point I guess I would make is it's definitely worth noting how much variation comes just from the envelopes. Like I would say envelopes are your primary tool in synth programming. They kind of shape your sound, they shape your timbre changes. LFOs and function generators come in when you need something cyclic, whether that's wah or vibrato or something of the sorts, wavetable sweeping. Or you know what? Here is a thing we could do. Actually, is we take this LFO, make it. Let's see. Let's take this one to here and this one to there, so they're very similar but not quite identical. And we can make the pulse width and give it some movement that way here. And make this free running. You hear the difference that made in the sound, how the timbre changes as the pulse width shifts. And again, like this is could not be any more of hey, Matsumori, welcome to the stream, and you are very welcome for the reminder. This is an amazing synth, and my main complaint about this synth is, and this is semi-ironic, of course, is that it makes me not want to have or use any other synths because it really jives with my way of thinking and approaching things. The way that you assign modulations, the way that everything is displayed, everything is laid out it just really fits my brain. So which almost in a way makes it bad for streaming because I tend to just do things automatically without thinking about or much less saying what I'm doing. So I do apologize if I'm glossing over things and people who are trying to watch this are like, holy shit, I have no idea what you just did, and I'm very confused and lost now. Yeah, Faceplant I've heard really good things about. Um, if things had gone a little differently, I definitely could have gone that way. Faceplant kind of interests me because it's supposed to be like um, essentially modular and digital, right? Like you can add, take away whatever you need, and it looks really freaking cool. But I am trying not to buy more synthesizers. Although, if these streams end up becoming remotely popular and companies want to send me free ones to try out on stream and show off on stream, um, you know, free is good. The whole ecosystem, the Arturia ecosystem, you mean? Yeah, I'm a big fan of that as well. Oh, nice. Yeah. I am a big fan. Let's see, is it Raudik? I apologize for that terrible pronunciation attempt. If I was not even close. People mispronounce my name all the time, and I understand that can be quite infuriating. Um, But yes, what you're saying here about routing LFOs through envelopes and envelopes through LFOs, that is, I don't know if you have any interest in modular, but that's been the big get with modular for me, and with the synth that does this as well, is just being able to modulate those things through each other and by each other, and the way that it gives different results. Here, let me save this, and I'll show you some of the cool stuff you can do with this. Let's see. All right, so let's just, for example, let's scroll through till we get an interesting wavetable. There we go. Some interesting stuff going on in there, right? Okay, so then we're going to take LFO1. Let's put the wavetable right in the middle. LFO1. Okay. Now, so these are like super. Let's take envelope 2, like this. It's going to make it a little bit interesting. And we'll take that and we can assign envelope 2 to the symmetry of LFO1. And so if you look at this on the screen here, as I hit the key, you see it, the symmetry distort as the envelope affects it. And then we could take this other envelope and we can give it a really slow attack and a really slow decay. And 3 LFO, and we'll do this one on the smoothness. And then to really go wacky, let's take LFO1 and modulate the sustain of this. And then you can see, if we go to this LFO1 page, so now instead of a completely normal sinusoidal LFO, you get this one thing that distorts weirdly. Based on where it's at. based on these envelopes affecting the LFO and yada yada. And that's just that was just a quick using one LFO and a couple of envelopes, like showing some different ways you can do it. You can have the LFOs affect each other, affecting envelopes, feeding back using the function generators, etc., etc. So yeah, it's oh, the kilohertz phase plant ecosystem. Yeah, it looks cool as hell. Like I said, I have just decided over the last year that more gear is definitely not the answer for me. So I'm avoiding it. Don't sell me on it. I don't want to be sold. Which is not to say you're doing anything wrong. I just if you tell me how cool it is too much, I'll definitely end up being like, oh, I want that thing. Um, so yeah, just trying some of these envelopes. So amp mod here, I'm just adding some velocity sensitivity to this. We can also do the same for the filter cutoff here. And do velocity like just about 20%. And some unison. And just to keep it on topic, since we promised bass lines. Yeah. Rodvik, I expect you could. I'm going to have a look at how they route their envelopes into their LFOs and all that, just out of curiosity. And if you join me on a future one, maybe we can talk more in detail once I actually know a little bit more about it. But yeah, it's probably not exactly the same. I'm sure that there's some things you could do on it that you can't do here, and vice versa. The other thing on here, actually, I should probably show you if we're talking about combining LFOs and envelopes, is this has these combinate functions, which take two mod sources or one, some of them, and then do something to them, like crossfade between them or um, sum, difference, multiply, divide, crossfade, lag. Lag can be really useful, actually. The lag function I used a bunch on some patches last week, where you basically will take here, I'll just why tell when you can show. So we're going to lag envelope to just a little bit, and then so basically what will happen is you just get a slightly slower version of the same envelope. And you can use that to, for example, add some wave folding. No, we want combinate 1, which is our lagged thing here. And I'm going to do a thing where, let's see. Okay, so I'm going to do mod wheel. Mod wheel closes the filter and ups the resonance. So that's me playing, sustaining a note and working that mod wheel a little bit. Probably need to come down a little more. Tweak this filter so it's a little more subtle. So one of the nice things about making bass sounds is you don't have to do effects on them. I mean, you don't ever have to do anything, obviously, but usually when I'm making non-bass sounds, I'll frequently add some effects because they don't sound finished until they have effects. But bass sounds, I mean, delay, compression, maybe a little distortion, drive, that kind of thing. Sometimes chorusing, maybe even a phaser here and there, but a lot of times bass is frequently fairly dry, and so it sounds done without having to have a bunch of effects on it. But yeah, so these combinates, like I mentioned the lag one, do the sum of, like, for example, the envelope 2 and LFO 1, and then as you can see here, I'm pointing at the screen. I don't know why. I think you could possibly see that. It gives you the combined output of those. And if you did the difference, you get the opposite. Subtracts one from the other, obviously. Multiply. As long as one's a 0, multiply is always. So yeah, so that gives you some different ways to combine. Trigger one when one crosses a threshold. Just a lot of stuff you can do. These combinatorial functions are amazing. And then you also in this have these function generators, which can run as either they can go unipolar or bipolar. They can run as LFO or envelope, meaning if it's an envelope, it triggers once, goes through the function, and then stops. If it's an LFO, it just cycles it. You can change a bunch of different stuff here, but these let you do these multi-breakpoint, so like for complex LFOs, and they can also give you the effect of like basically combining an LFO and an envelope in some ways. So, yeah, they are. Yes, they are mod processors. That's exactly what they are. Variable rate per note. What do you mean? I'm not sure what you mean by that. Variable rate. Oh, like variable rate LFOs per note. I mean, we could do keyboard tracking to the speed, if that's what you mean. So if we go rate hertz, go to keyboard and assign that. So So the higher up on the keyboard you go, the faster the LFO goes. I'm not sure if that's what you mean or not. Could you make the change rate with each note press? Yes. Oh, I could definitely do that. Yeah, for sure. If you just want a different, um, that's super simple. Barely an inconvenience. Let's see. So let me turn that off, and I will do exactly that. So we've got a sample and hold. We'll do random 2 because that's a basic sample and hold. So you get a different value each time, and we will do random 2 assigned, random 2 assigned to LFO1 rate. And we can make it wildly different. There you go. Okay, so I have just been called to dinner, so I'm going to wrap this up. It didn't go quite the full 2 hours that I usually like to go, but, you know, family time calls. Let me save this. We're going to call this one Wonk Bass because it's kind of wonky and it uses a lot of technique because I was showing off some of the different stuff this can do. Bass is, let's just say, sure, it's a hard bass. Why not? It's an IDM bass. It's bizarre, dirty, maybe psychedelic. Why not? Okay, good enough. Okay. Hey, yeah, thank you, Matsumori Media. I hope that you can make it to another one. I am going to try and do these on a regular basis. I'm thinking Tuesdays and Thursdays, probably about this time. But if there are times that work better or worse for people who are interested in viewing these, I would love to hear it so that I can, if possible, make that work as well. Because I'm not really married to any particular time. This, for example, was a good time slot because it fits in like between when my afternoon duties are done and when it's time to eat dinner. But obviously I get called to dinner, and so I'm going to jam. Thank you, Radvik. I really appreciate you coming by. I really it was interesting to hear your insights on some of those Korg synthesizers. I'm going to look up some of that stuff, and maybe we can talk some more about it next time, or we can talk about it on Blue Sky. Thanks again for everyone for stopping by. I'm going to hit the stop button.